If you're doing strength training and you've hit a plateau, I'm going to tell you how you can always successfully break your plateau and add 30 to 50 kilos to your squat, bench and deadlift, even upwards of 70 kilos in about 6 months. In this video, I'm going to go over the 5-step process that I take every athlete through to be able to identify where and why they are not making progress. And this system will help find all those hidden potentials, not to only increase your strength, but to increase your performance across all sports. I'm Gus Cook, powerlifting coach, strength and conditioning coach for the last 15 years, and I have gathered over 26 all-time records with over 250 placings, 100 gold medals, hundreds of national and world records, including the world's strongest female. So when we start strength training to increase our performance, we inevitably hit some sort of plateau. We can do some sort of training program and it will always work. But there are fundamental reasons why it stops working. And we end up leading to fatigue, lack of progress, injuries, and this is part of that 5-step foundation. We generally run into this plateau around that 1 to 2 year mark. We have this ability to constantly be able to add to your primary lifts, squat, bench and deadlift, and we just keep hitting this wall. And it's fairly simple if you're in the first 1 to 2 years to very quickly add 70 kilos. But then the next step is that we'll tend to find a coach, someone who knows what they're doing, and inevitably we still might end up hitting a plateau in that 2 to 3 year mark, maybe 4 year mark if the coach is really good. But there are hidden underlying factors. And in my 5-step process, I'm going to show you what they are to uncover and unpack that strength. But it doesn't stop there. You could be a lot more advanced in strength training. You might already be a highly competitive powerlifter. So we might experience that plateau again around that 4 to 6 year mark. And this is really hard to break, but the principles still remain. There is a process to this and it needs to be done from step 1 through to step 5, looking at each part that unpacks what is hidden to your potential. So before I go into this process, I want to explain why should we strength train? And I just want to go over it really quickly. If you're already a powerlifter, this is obvious. So this is for everyone else. Number 1, it is the foundation of performance. It isn't just about maximal strength. It underpins all attributes to performance. Agility, speed, reaction, power, change of direction, they all come under the category of strength. And all these attributes spread across every single sport. Number 2, specificity. Now this is how you train and what attributes you want to develop in those areas of performance. We can normally break this into 3 categories: velocity, duration, and load. For example, something requiring high speed, that is high velocity, low load, long duration. And in the typical powerlifting sense, low velocity, low duration, high load. And this works as a spectrum across every single sport. 3, a massive reduction in injury rate. Especially in contact sports, your ability to handle impact trauma drastically increases. Increase in bone density, increase in tendon strength, increased endurance, reduced fatigue. So many things in your body become so much more efficient and resilient that you can just handle so much more trauma. 4, force production. Everything is force production. It's not only how much strength you can produce, but the rate of that production. This carries over to jump height, sprint speed, throwing distance, explosiveness, and your ability to control that in any direction. And lastly, why this is so important, neuromuscular efficiency. It's not about the size, but how effective your brain communicates to your muscle and how much power or how much of a signal that sends to it. So it's not only the speed of transmission, not only the power of transmission, but how many times you can send that signal to produce a higher amount of force without putting on a huge amount of muscle size. So in the 5-step process, when I get any sort of athlete from any level coming to me, I go through these 5 steps. And these steps work on a hierarchy of the most important. If you don't follow the first one, it doesn't matter about the second, third, fourth, or fifth. Now, you can take a bit from all of them, but we have to start foundationally with step number 1. So step 1, the right training stimulus. Now, this seems obvious. You got to train for strength. But there are probably 2 main factors to this. One is maximal recoverable volume. Now, this isn't just to do with the training specifically with your strength, but overall capacity with all the training you're doing. Training is a stress, and that stress needs to be balanced with rest. Now, different types of stress take a certain amount of time to recover. Now, there is a maximal limit to how much you can recover from and adapt from. If you exceed that, you do not gain the benefit. Same is if you are under your minimum effective volume. You're not doing enough. So when we look at this, we have to look at this as a whole picture. If you're training a sport and you're training 3, 4, 5 times a day of a specific sport and trying to train 4 or 5 days a week in strength training, that is a large amount of work, especially when strength training requires a lot of effort and produces a lot of fatigue that carries over. So not only do we not recover from the strength training, but skill acquisition in the sport we're training for is drastically reduced. And if you zoom out a little bit more, you can packet all your training under the category of stress, and you can look at your external stresses. If external stresses are really high, that contributes to the total amount of recoverable volume. So usually a key indicator here, if someone's not making progress even on minimal training, usually the stress is really high externally, and that needs to be reduced. Right? We're going to talk about the second half in one of the later steps on the rest side of things, because you can enhance that to get more out of your work. Right. Step 2, movement development. A major limitation in someone's ability to not be able to make progress is the quality of their lift. First reason is poor quality movement leads to injury. So usually the things that get you out of pain are usually also the things that improve your strength. Yes, strength is an inherent ability, but its primary category is that it is a skill. It works on the same line as load stuff, such as throwing, jumping. They are all a form of strength. It fits along the same spectrum, but something really heavy. And you got to train it with the same level of specificity. The motor development that happens within inside the muscle is exactly the same. We cannot get this confused with bodybuilding. The goal of that is just going to the gym, getting a pump and building muscle size. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're training the skill. Then awareness of body's position in space. So for something like a squat, we can generally get a lot stronger in the squat. But as you get that more advanced, you have to start looking at how I'm going to control every portion of the body, how I'm going to control the rib cage, how I'm going to control my breathing. What is that relationship to that with the pelvis? What does my hips do? And what does my knees do? What kind of pressure do I put through to the ground? And this is a fundamental skill, not just for squats specifically, but it carries over to everything. And this builds a large, deep understanding of your awareness, what we can call proprioception, which not just carries over to your ability to enhance your strength, but to enhance any other skill. So focusing on the skill of developing your primary movements will drastically work towards improving your strength and enhancing your performance. Step 3. Now, you have to follow those 2 steps first. And then step 3, then this is where I start to look into the rest side of things, or recovery, the things that you do externally. Think of this as a balancing scale like yin and yang. We want enough balance of things that improve recoverability. If our active recoverability is super low, our tolerance for stress will be lower. So we have to put emphasis on a few basic things. Number 1 is your sleep. That is absolutely crucial. High level performing athletes, to get the most out of your training needs to be sleeping 8 to 9 hours. Some of the general population, 7 hours would do. But as athletes, we need more. You might feel like you're not needing more, but you need it. Then there's nutrition. Nutrition is like, if you haven't followed any sort of nutrition plan, it is like adding steroids. My athletes get accused of taking steroids all the time because nutrition plays such a huge role in recovery and enhancement. You're just stupid not to incorporate a quality nutrition plan. You're just leaving so much more in the tank. It'll give you that ability to train a lot more, a lot harder, a lot longer, recover faster, and you'll get more out of your training. Think of it as a return on investment. You're investing in your time to put the stress in your body to try to get some sort of result, but you're losing half of it because your nutrition sucks. Now, there are other layers to it. I'm not going to go too much into it, but if you're just a stressed person with high anxiety, you have to start looking at things to bring that down, regulate it, because we're basically amplifying the sympathetic nervous system, which is more stress, and we need to down-regulate parasympathetic so that we can rest more. Step 4. Now, this is a huge limitation in some people, and it needs to be looked at and addressed, and that is mindset. Now, this is not some hairy-fairy stuff. There are 2 types of mindsets that I always see fail or succeed: a victim mentality and an ownership mentality. A victim mentality is poor me, this is hard, I can't recover, I don't want to train, this hurts, why does this always happen to me, I'm sore, and you start to identify with all the negative side of things. Ownership is the person who looks at the problem, tries to learn from it, and finds a solution. No matter how bad it gets, even if it's injury after injury, failure after failure, we take ownership. Now, this can be really hard to break. The first key thing here is to identify where you're being a victim to. As a coach, this can be quite hard to navigate, but with a few basic tools that you can give someone, you can teach them to reframe their thinking and start to look for solutions rather than excuses. And another part to this is the hardship ceiling. The hardship ceiling is a limitation that has been created by the hardest thing you've ever done in some particular part of your life, even though the reality is a lot higher. Now, this is perception of difficulty. When you take an ownership mentality, it helps you understand that there is always this ceiling and that I always need to push just outside of that at a constant rate. It is better to be overshooting everything and learning to come back and recognize than always falling short. Now, step number 5 is tactics. Now, you either got to use more specific tactics, but usually more often than not, you need to use it less. Everyone's looking for the next coolest thing to do, the most advanced thing to do. But you need to spend nearly 80% of your time always developing the basics. The basics add 95% of the reason why you should progress. And if you master that, then the tactics give you that extra edge. It actually lets you get more out of the foundations. If you're using some sort of advanced tactic with very poor foundations, it leads to very little results. But if the foundation of your work is huge and you add those small tactics, then you get so much more out of it because you're enhancing those basics to a much greater degree rather than enhancing lower quality foundation. You can kind of look at this in a 3-step process. We have fundamental multilateral development. Think of this as generalized athleticism. Then we have specific strength building, which is the foundation of whatever strength attributes you need to develop. Strength, power, speed. We don't need to look for the specific speed or power generating kind of thing. We just need to learn to produce more power. If you require speed, plyometrics, Olympic lifting. You need to develop strength, squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, chin-ups. They're the core foundation. Then you have your enhancement, the tactics. This is going into the sports specific. That's the same with powerlifting. Powerlifting is a sport that we train for. Fighting is a sport we train for. Rugby is a sport we train for. We develop the attributes so that we can apply the specific tactics to get a ton more out of it. So the basic key takeaways from all this is that the basics always matter. Don't look for the new cool thing, new trend. What makes progress is really boring, but it's what makes progress. Stop looking at doing more and get the small things right.